Hello and welcome to Voolta's first official podcast. This episode will be slightly different from what we plan to do in the future, which will be more structured and focused on the technology industry. However, today we're going to give you a little intro to Voolta and throw some questions at the CEO, Craig Felton, who is here with me now. If you'd like to say hello, Craig.
Hello, Jan.
So, if you are in the process of getting your startup off the ground or find yourself at seed stage, we will be covering some of the challenges you can expect and how to prep your business for funding, for example. And you may find some useful insights and information ahead. So listen in. So Craig, first off, I'd like you to give us a little intro on yourself, please. If you could give us a brief overview on your career so we can get set the stage on how you find yourself in a position you do at the minute as the CEO of Voolta.
Cool, thanks, Jan. So my career in technology started 24 years ago. I turned 40 this year, which is a massive milestone, but I actually started working when I was just under 16. So left school and went to work for my uncle's data cabling company, and spent 3 or 4 years there. Always had an interest in IT as a kid, and for me this was coming into kind of that IT arena, very much at the layer zero, the grassroots. From there, I kind of did more kind of engineering, networky jobs, and kind of just started moving up the stack and learning more. Still staying as an engineer as I moved into data centers, but then kind of moved into more project management and running implementations on sites, and then. I think 7 years into my career, I was kind of picked up as a junior consultant for one of the leading consultancies in the UK, which did kind of physical infrastructure. So I think they took a bet on me, no university education, to join them, and kind of went from the blue collar to the white collar at that point. Since then, I've worked for some big banks. Facebook, not a bank, but they were one of my clients for 2 years, working as contracts, building data centers, working in the cloud arena, connectivity. So very much in that physical infrastructure space as a consultant. And for the past 10 to 12 years, I've kind of run my own businesses. So I've been working for myself and had a few startups along the way. Along that journey, I met a great guy called Ray Bricknell at Behind Every Cloud, and kind of became his business partner for a period. And we were working on kind of a way to do consulting without charging clients. So it was based on the referral commission model, rather than a client pay us money to go and run an RFP, an RFI process. We would work on risk reward. And in some ways, that what we're trying to do at Voolta is the digitalization, if I can say it, of that business model and kind of where I see the future going as well. So been with Voolta now for 14 months, I think 14 months to be precise. Voolta as a business was founded 2 years ago, but we can talk about that in a second. So very much a varied career, very much infrastructure centric.
Based around critical infrastructure.
Critical infrastructure.
Purely critical support. Which that's really good. So, as you mentioned, Voolta. What is Voolta? Tell us about Voolta.
Okay, so the premise of Voolta is, the way I would describe it to someone not in the technology arena would be, it's compare the market. Compare the market, I think, is one of the best consumer marketplaces. You go on there, look at difficult products such as life insurance, mortgages, etc. The supply side is noisy. There's lots of advertising. Who do you choose? Who do you trust? But the way the market's built and foundationed is, you stick in your requirements, and it connects you with the best fit products or businesses you should speak to. So Voolta's built on that premise, and in the very, very, very early days of Voolta, we used to use kind of compare the market as our beacon and our reference point So even now, even in the last 2 weeks, we've had our UX designer talking about what's compared the market do. Our mission is quite clear. We want to cut down the noise in the market. We want to connect buyers with the best fit sellers. We want to make sure that buyers don't need to go through these many channels of people, resellers, consultants, agents, etc. Buyers these days value their time. When I started in IT, we used to call them jollies, but most business transactions were done on the golf course or were done with weekends.
Still are.
We still are. Yeah, we need to accept that. But I think the generation coming through now are used to going on their phone, hitting a button, and things turning up. And this generation are now the next generation of IT leaders. They want that digitalisation. Second time I've struggled with that word. I think I need to change it. And us as a business, we're providing that platform to do so.
And like you say, the fact that it's IT and it's not digitised, it seems a bit crazy from the outside. I mean, this seems like a great opportunity.
That is the problem. Well, kind of the problem area, but also the irony of it is that we are in a digital industry. Like the buzzword of the last 5 years has been digital transformation.
Yes.
But the whole process of transacting is analog. It's done via RFPs, RFIs. It's 16-week processes. Yeah. Pay a consultant $20,000, and I've benefited. I've there's been benefit of me doing that. Financially, and I've enjoyed them projects. But there's nothing I've done from kind of a day rate consulting or working with a firm like Behind Every Cloud that can't be put in a digital format and allow buyers and sellers to connect without the people in between kind of steering the ship, whether there's conscious bias or unconscious bias. There's horror stories of vendors or sellers kind of getting gigs based on some very dodgy transactions or things happening underhand, and it doesn't work in the best interest of the buyers. So I'm keen and passionate that buyers should always connect with the best fit sellers, and our platform provides that foundation and to do so.
100%, because like you say, at the end of the day, the service that's being provided is the sustainability of a company, isn't it? It's like that's keeping a company running. If that falls over because consultant A wants to make money off his friend that works in such and such a data center, then I guess it's not very good practice.
You're right, and it's without sounding too dramatic. I mean, I don't think in most IT organisations or firms with IT that people don't die, but people lose their jobs. It affects their livelihoods. Yes. And a bad vendor working with a buyer, one of our clients, can really disrupt their business for 3 years because they're working with a partner they're locked into a contract with. The exit out of these contracts don't exist unless you write a big check, and people lose their jobs. So it is important that when we work in a world when now everything's as a service. The arts today is not to be a master of one trade, but to be a jack of all trades, and understanding how they all piece together and what's the relationship between the two. And you're using vendors and service providers to go to the cloud, go to that service provider and joining them up. So there's without sounding too negative, there are some great vendors out there. We just want to bring these vendors to the top of the pile, so they actually get a chance to work with buyers, and the value is reciprocal either way.
Yeah. So that makes sense. I mean, so the idea is to remove the bias from the.
It's 100%. It's removing the bias. It's understanding. There's also subjectivity, and I always thought I had no bias, but I'm sure I have. It's probably more unconscious bias than anything else, but there's an algorithm where we ask questions after questions after questions. The algorithm runs and it connects the buyers and sellers together. There's no funny business in between. It's
suited.
Input, output. Yeah. It's suited. It's weighted. We will give you pros and cons, and we feel that is the fairest way. And the buyers who use our platform, or the customers who are buying IT, they don't have to transact. We're just compare the market. We are just given a short list of 3 to 4 best fit sellers. We're giving us a rating, a score. We're giving some risks. What works, what doesn't. And just allowing for them to frame the next discussions with them as they go into that kind of more detailed technical and commercial discussion. So we're kind of a distillery of IT vendors, if that makes sense.
Lovely. So based off the back of this, so obviously you've started this business, you come into the business and you've been building it up over the past 12 to 14 months. Can you give us a little bit on what kind of challenges you face, getting funding, and what was the biggest milestone that you've come to so far?
So I think just to take a little step back is, as mentioned at the start, the business was founded June 2020, so almost 2 years to this day, by a gentleman called Esteban. So Esteban has had a very distinguished career in ad tech for companies like Facebook, and he understands marketplaces and how it works on the hyperscale. When he founded it, I think via a mutual connection in his personal circle, he was connected to someone who worked in the data center industry, and they mentioned to him that this industry is prime for some sort of marketplace or digital platform to kind of make a difference. So he kind of focused on that, and then fast forward 9 months, Esther and I had our first meeting just through an industry connection. The premise was as an ex-Facebook guy looking to build a marketplace. So I was interested, firstly because I worked for Facebook for a few years, and secondly because I knew data centers, and thirdly because I agreed with the premise of the business. Data centers particularly did need some sort of digitalization, struggling again, to get that off the ground. So Esther and I met at the time, and this was a big milestone pre-me. He secured a government grant from the UK Innovation Fund to build the MVP. So he already kind of had some cash to build the business. He was looking to build a software product. I had no experience building software products at the time. I do now, but not at that time. But a very close friend of mine, and someone I worked with at the Royal Bank of Scotland for many years, building data centres, Harry Pod, had a company called Podtech who could build this platform for him. So I connected Harry and Esther together to, for Harry's business to actually build.
So they were the initial connection, and then
they were the initial connection, and I kind of went away, kept in contact with Harry, an email back and forth with Esther over the past 4 months. So the next 4 months, and they reached out to say, look, we've built the MVP. What do you think? And we then reconnected, like the MVP at the time. It looked good. My only concern at the time about the business, and I think this was kind of my influence, there was 2 things which I wasn't really happy with. First thing was it was very data center focused, and from the experience of my day job consulting, etc., people weren't buying data centers anymore. People were buying clouds. If you owned a data center, you were seen. Now you're seen as a bit of a dinosaur. Now data centers are needed. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying most enterprise clients are definitely going down that.
It's an old school method. Yeah. I guess some companies do want to still keep that in house, right?
Yeah. And I think we know as well there are companies where things just don't work in the cloud. The cloud is a landing ground for most things, but then sometimes due to cost, this SQL database is very chatty. It's going to cost you a fortune in the cloud. Keep it on-prem. So there are business cases, but the way I've seen the market going was if the platform at the time was released 10, 15 years ago, perfect. It was when it was needed. For where we were today was the market was quite mature. The big the leaders of data center colocation, people like Equinix, etc., were buying companies or had bought companies, acquired. New entrants such as Iron Mountain were buying companies into it. So it's quite a mature.
Iron Mountain. Yeah.
But at the time, mature market. So my thought at the time was that if someone's buying a data center, they've got comms requirements, so there's connectivity requirements. And if they've got connectivity requirements, there's probably a firewall somewhere, so they have security requirements. They may have a project requirement, so there's resource needed. That it's not just find a data center and walk away. There's a lot of value add the platform could get just on that transaction. So I thought it had to be more multi-product than more of a singular silo product, which was data centers. So that was kind of my first kind of input into the business. My second input was the company name was called Cool Bytes at the time. Cool Bytes as in cool run-ins. So for me, that was just a bit of a pants name.
Especially with the market that you're working with, I think, the sound of it.
It worked. I think it worked from a perspective of data centers. You're keeping the bytes cooling for where we were trying to get the direction of the product to be kind of multi-product marketplace. It just didn't work, and we kind of like that. So Estee and I kind of continued chatting. I came in as an angel investor at that point because I was busy with consulting day job, my day job at the time, and kind of left it for another 2 months. Came back in, kind of realised that I think the business had got to a point where it needed more industry experience, and for my investment I made to actually kind of see a good yield, it probably needed some of my experience as well. And drive just to get it to the point. And sorry to interrupt. Estee have done an amazing job. That government grant, is a hard thing to get. The government just doesn't give money out unless your fuel vouchers are 150 quid. But it was a hard job. He'd assembled a team. He raised capital. I just thought that what was lacking was that industry experience, and it was kind of for me at that time, speaking to Estee, I was less busy at work, and it felt right for me to come in and kind of, I think from Estee's perspective, it was music to his ears because
so great idea, just needed the
execution.
Yeah.
So that was
based off of the back of that. Yeah. So, for example, for some of our listeners, with the angel funding, you described it as being very, very difficult to get the initial funding as well. That's a hard process. What are the other steps there that are involved? Is there any benefits, any government schemes that you can use?
I always think at the time we had the pandemic, so for most people was a dreadful time. And a bit of a reset to the world, but economically it needed stimulation. So the government at the time were putting money into the systems.
I thought this really drove the cloud. Really drove the cloud market.
It did. So everyone worked from home. So Teams, Zoom. Zoom became a verb. Yeah. You didn't jump on a video conference. You Zoomed people. Zoom was being used with my social group. So the pandemic. There was actually a LinkedIn post which was really funny at the time. Was vote on what's been the biggest digital transformation event in your company's in your company in the last 5 years, and it was your CIO, your consultant like Accenture or the digital or the pandemic. And everyone said the pandemic because people had to work from home. People had to use Zoom. They had to share documents wisely. They couldn't go and stand by someone's desk. So that changed the way we worked, and everyone realised the reliance we had on technology at the time. There was also another LinkedIn post at the time saying that, again, this may or may not be true, but 85% of the internet traffic traverses one data centre in the Docklands. This is for the UK. So, from an infrastructure perspective, resiliency.
That's huge.
We had a single point of failure. But then, taking a step back, and I've said this for the last 10 years, like most of the critical data centres supporting financial exchanges are built in a single road in Slough. So these single point of failures, we do have. But at the time, the internet was always our thing. We'd go home and watch Netflix. It actually became critical to everyone. So the internet went, people would stop working, and they can't get into the office. But back to your question about kind of raising money. So government grants are good. I think at the time, timing's everything in business. The government were more generous in terms of grants, and I think Cool Bites at the time, Voolta now, were seen as kind of a future business for the government, and ticked a lot of boxes and allowed Estee to get money to build that MVP, which was
so they see value in it, because otherwise they wouldn't invest.
Indeed, they saw value. The next challenge is you're trying to raise some kind of angel fund at the point, so angel funds at the point to keep you going, to give you runway.
Could you give us a quick brief on what an angel fund is?
So an angel, so the way it's structured, and again, I knew of some of it just from previous businesses, but was nowhere near an expert. And I've gone through that pain now, and I kind of understand it pretty well. But the best way to frame it is, pre-seed is where you've got an idea and it's on a deck, and you're going to an investor or an angel. And an angel is basically someone like yourself who's got some cash in the bank and likes to speculate, or likes to think about how they can invest it, and you invest as an angel. So it's more of a singular person who likes to invest in business.
As opposed to a business, you've got individuals that can give you some backing.
Yeah, and they call that pre-seed. So there is no product, there is no business, it's an idea. So pre-seed is kind of that early stage. At that early stage, I think a government grant's the best thing to do, because most people who go for a pre-stage raise haven't proven they could build a business or executed. So it's a lot harder to get money at that point, because your risk's higher. What have you done type thing. The next stage is seed funding. So best way to describe seed funding is you've built your product, you're about to launch, but you need some money to go test the market for 12 to 18 months. Now angels can still come in at that point. So
so they're not off the table.
They're not off the table. Yeah, they're still in. In fact, kind of at seed, you're kind of more of a angels like you a little better, because you've proven you can execute. You can actually get a product somewhere. You can assemble a team. You can show
them confidence in their investment.
100%. You can show them something physical or virtual, depending on what the business is. It's Elon Musk was on the podcast for TED a couple of weeks ago, and he just said everything looks good on PowerPoint. Which I think is great. Yeah. Like he said, the early Tesla PowerPoint designs were amazing, but the first prototype wasn't that amazing. But he said it was chalk and cheese, because at least people had something physical they could look at, touch, rather than looking at something in a PowerPoint, which looks pretty.
Which you can polish and polish and polish.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. So from our perspective, it was So seed. Going on a tangent. So seed is kind of that, and then what you're trying to do between seed and what they call Series A is you're finding product market fit, you're proving your theories. So you're saying, right, give me something to go to the market now and prove that this product can do X, Y, and Z. So you're using a very small sample of clients, etc. You're getting some market feedback. The classic term in the entrepreneur circles is you pivot. You listen to the market, you move on, and then you find product market fit. You prove your theories, and at that point, you're showing revenue coming into the business.
It's kind of a brand awareness stage.
Brand awareness, yeah,
which is a big thing because, as we all know, advertising is not cheap.
It's not cheap, and it's not about scale at this point. It's just making sure your product is needed and you are listening to your buyers' needs. Not listen to what they think you should do. It's just what the problems are. So you're kind of listening to what the problems are, and then at that point you're making revenue. You've proved your theories. You've got your cash is running low, so your runway, which you've been doing for 12 months, you go to Series A, and Series A, kind of an average Series A round at the moment, and where before the US would be where the big investments are, but in the last 2 to 3 years, Europe is now.
Right, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of shifted a bit. I mean, mainly due to companies like Spotify, etc., and a lot of the fintech companies in the UK has actually kind of changed that a bit. But an average Series A round now is about 10 million US dollars, and then you go through Series B, C, D, yada yada yada, to when you either exit or close. But there is the valley of death between seed and Series A, and that's what they call the valley of death. That you've got to start at scale, you've got to start proving, you've got to jump up, and it's a hard job. So it's raising money is not easy. It's people, there's a lot of VCs out there. You get a lot of knockbacks, but it's part of the course. And I can remember speaking to an actor once. Wasn't a famous actor, by the way. I'm not name dropping, but they just said they go to 100 auditions and they get none of the. They get no parts. But it's not. Right. It's not because they're not right. It's because it's just they're not the right fit for what the person's looking for. Then it's not because they're not good. It's just they're not right. So it's just understanding that as part of the process.
So you've got to take the rejections, the put downs on board. Yeah, work with it, overcome it.
Overcome it. I think, and Cliff, we should make a mention to as well. Cliff runs his own. He's been involved in the business more strategic and a growth perspective, and he's been kind of helping us with our pitch decks and where we are. But he was actually saying that the funny thing is about when you go for these raises, every time you learn something, this isn't right, that's not right, here's your good things. And to be fair to the VCs, is when they do knock you back, it's very much what I'd call a shit sandwich. It's starts with good. This is where you're crap, and this is will end on a nicety. But there is some truth, and where we had made mistakes, some of the fundraising was fair, and a lot of them were down to me at the time. And
I guess Cliff kind of helped you preempt some of this.
He helps us preempt some of it, but until you do it yourself and learn, you have to learn. But what he was saying was, by the time a company starts their pitch and the product or their business may have no legs, but the time they go through that whole process, they've adapted their pitch deck, they've learned where they're going wrong, their pitch statements. So actually, by the time they get investment, they look very investable, but the actual business model is a pile of shit. so it is quite. I think you do need to tread carefully. I think if someone's asking you for money, it's like how far they're down the process of actually raising money. Because if they've gone through that, it's like if on Rightmove, if the house has been on the market for 6-7 months, there's generally a reason why that house is not sold. Yeah. And with raising, the companies which haven't raised, have gone through that knockback and have actually perfected the pitches. But VCs are clever people. And they know what they want. With Voolta, it was a bit different. Voolta was very much a kind of a marketplace no one really understood.
Yes, it's very, and unless you're in on the market, the likeliness of you understanding it, I believe, is quite limited. So that must be hard to try and portray that.
It is, 100%. And you can go and, most startups these days, which were born in the cloud, generally start with some AWS credits, or they put their credit card behind AWS and they build from there. But serious businesses, don't just use AWS. They have phone systems. They've got backup requirements. They've got connectivity requirements, so on and so on. So people don't really understand kind of the complexity of the other parts of it. Everyone just thinks the cloud is the answer. The cloud's a big part, 100%, but there are the other infrastructure services which feed into the cloud and support the cloud, which a business needs. The challenge for us as well is most VCs in London were 10 to 20 people. So there was no IT manager. It would be someone who would manage their IT for them.
They've got an email address.
Exactly.
Domain.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So they didn't see the complexities. But when we're speaking to VCs, which were at scale in terms of headcount, they understand that IT is not cheap. And there's and
it's the way of the world.
It's the way of the world, and every 3 to 5 years there is a step change in IT. And that step change kind of moves the way people go. 5 years ago in financial services, the cloud was a dirty word. Where we are now is people just do not go anywhere but the cloud. But it's taken a while.
And to be like myself, I've got over a decade in IT as well, and I'm still not convinced about the cloud. Not entirely. I mean, it's. I still believe that actually co-location is for a lot of businesses, especially in the financial sector, is still the best option.
I agree. I think it's the way. Going back to kind of Ray, we used to frame it.
He's our BEC.
He's the BEC MD. The way he used to frame it 7 years ago, we used to frame it 7 years ago when we met, was always like best execution venue. Don't look at the solution, look at what the problem is, and look at what the application is, and work out where should it go and sit in the cloud? Should it sit on-prem? Should it be a SaaS-based service?
Yeah.
When do you use it? What's the business requirement? So look at it from top down rather than bottom up. But everyone seems to just gravitate towards the cloud these days, which is a bit. I find a bit odd. And then I also, going back to the resiliency point about internet running through one data center, 85% of the internet traffic with one data center in the UK, and then Slough being that mecca for data centers. But then you've got the resiliency risk of if that one road in Slough got blown up or an asteroid hits it, we're all taken out.
Crippled the infrastructure of the country.
There's two prominent cloud players now, Azure and AWS, and everyone's kind of in these facilities. And, if they have a mass outage, you are crippling the economy at that point. So
because then you got to factor in the care for the service as well. Because at the end of the day, Microsoft, if something happens to their services, how concerned are they about your service?
100%.
So if you're managing it yourself,
you got. I mean, and go back 5 years before the cloud kind of took over. Is if you were in kind of a managed service provider's private cloud, you could typically pick up the phone to the MD or the owner of the company and say, "Your servers aren't working. What's happening? Get it resolved." Now you're in a help desk queue. With millions of people. So I do think that there are lessons going to be learnt from cloud adoption, where we're going. But I do see how attractive it is in some instances as well. I think it's just a balance. I don't think it's the answer. I think it's looking at the problem or the application, the business use before you decide that execution venue.
Brilliant, fantastic. Okay, in the interest of not making this drag out too long, I think we'll. I know you're a busy man also, so maybe if you're happy with that, we'll leave it here for now, and we'll be back with another episode.
That sounds fantastic.
Lovely. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, Craig.
Pleasure's all mine, yeah. Thank you so much. See you later. Bye.